Hello, everybody. Welcome to Travel on the Pod TV network. And today we're going to be looking at the city of Ephesus. Now, earlier we actually did have a program. You can see it somewhere on our channel, Ephesus and the House of the Virgin Mary, which is at Ephesus. But today we're going to cover other things other than the House of the Virgin Mary at Ephesus. We're going to cover the city of Ephesus, especially the Temple of Artemis at Ephesus. And the Temple of Artemis at Ephesus was one of the seven wonders of the ancient world. It was huge. And then what happened? Well, what happened is it fell into disrepair. And so the thing is, this whole city basically went into ruin. So right now there isn't very much there, but there's a history behind this. Okay, so the important thing we're going to look at, of course, is in Ephesus is the Temple of Artemis. That was the first thing that drew me to Ephesus because I knew it was one of the seven wonders of the ancient world. Unfortunately, it's all in ruins. There's only two that are still standing. So, there isn't much left of the ancient world. Okay, so what about Ephesus? Once you go there, first of all, you can't fly to Ephesus. Okay, you have to fly into Izmir, which used to be Smyrna, which is a big, wonderful city. And then from there, you get a tour down to Ephesus because Ephesus is basically a city of ruins. And so Ephesus and basically the pyramids at Giza are really only two things that are left that you can see of the ancient world. Everything else is completely gone, but those things are still there. So when you get to Ephesus, what will you notice? Well, you're going to notice the marble streets. Now, they're still around. There's a lot of them. We're going to try to show you some of these marble streets in today's video, but they do exist, and we're going to see if we can take a look at it. Aha, here we go. We have marble streets in Ephesus even today. The other thing that you're going to notice if you go to Ephesus, and this is kind of the famous part of Ephesus, is they call it the Library of Celsus. And this held like 12,000 scrolls at one time. And it's a huge, gigantic. So it's kind of interesting when you go through this. Okay, so what else do you have in Ephesus? Got to have the latrines, otherwise known as the bathrooms. And they were big on bathrooms, and they're communal bathrooms, and they're huge, and there were a lot of them. Now, the good thing is, though, that it gets rid of the waste. In other words, that's the whole idea. But they were into their bathrooms, and they're into latrines, and so we gotta take a look at latrines, and here they are. Dare put that on their wonderful marble streets. So, Anyway, you got to see the latrines. I mean, this is what you do when you travel to Ephesus. You got to see the latrines, uh, and there are quite a few things there. And then, of course, they have some of their famous streets, which we looked at before, but we're going to look at again because they are kind of interesting to look at. And this one I like the most, Arcadian Street, and it's because it is marble. You do get a view all the way to the sea. And how many there are. So, um, and that they're still around. So it's all good. Then, of course, the Ephesus House of the Virgin Mary. Now, we did a whole special on the House of the Virgin Mary because it was, but if you go to the House of the Virgin Mary, it's like I said, it's pretty nondescript. It is the House of Virgin Mary is seen by people from Muslims go to the House of Virgin Mary, Christians go to the House of Virgin Mary. I mean, everybody goes to the House of the Virgin Mary. And the reason it's in Ephesus is John took Mary with her to Ephesus and that she needed a place to live. So they found a house for her way up in the mountains, and that's where she lived the remainder of her days. So that was also a very strong attraction to go because I never heard of this house of the Virgin Mary. They just don't mention it. Yet it is it's pretty big, and the house is actually pretty big. But the house was built in the 5th century, the ones you're going to see. But underneath it, and this is not unusual, the foundation was from the 1st century, which is one reason they believe this actually was Mary's house. It's because of the foundation that they saw that was built in the 1st century. And yes, you can see it. It's on the outskirts of Ephesus, and your guides will take you. And I went to get my guide, which I've used over and over again. It's actually a pretty good service. The other one's Viator. I believe that both those are pretty good services. Okay, now the history of Ephesus is the Caestos River, which was not nice to Ephesus because when it silted in, basically they lost the city. I mean, it was a disaster beyond biblical proportions that would happen. But prior to the river silting in, it actually held 250,000 people. It was so large, there's actually a stadium there that holds 25,000 people. And there are some that they still even use today. So you can actually see that. But the big disaster was it lost its trading route as the river silted in. And the other, so they just had some problems that they couldn't deal with. But the history goes back even further, that in 3000 BC, now you have to imagine you go back 2000 BC or like 2000 AD, you go down, then you got to go another 3,000 years. So it's like 5,000 years ago. 5,000 years ago. It was the capital of the kingdom of Arzawa, which I am not familiar with. I guess the historians are listening to this go, oh yeah, everybody knows the kingdom of Arzawa. I didn't, but anyway, it was the capital of the kingdom of Arzawa. Okay, so how did it get started? Here's one of the stories. The Oracle of Delphi. A fish will show and a wild boar will lead you on. And the son of King Condorus actually saw a fish and a wild boar, and he followed the wild boar and the fish. I mean, these stories, you can't make them up. And then he founded the city of Ephesus. Then Ephesus, of course, was occupied by Croesus in 560 BC. Now, King Croesus was known to have more money than anybody. Oh, he's got more money than King Croesus. No one has more gold than King Croesus. And he had a lot of money. But what he also did is he decided, Ephesus is pretty nice. I think I will occupy it. So in 560, he occupied it. And that was a problem of being a port city, is that you do get occupied quite a bit. And it just went on further. Then it was occupied by the Persians in 546, because not only can Croesus come from the water and take over the city, the Persians came from the land on the other side and took over the city in 546 BC. If you go there, you're not going to see a lot of forts. There aren't forts or structures to hold the city So it became a real problem for the city. In other words, being occupied. What can you do? Then it was occupied by Alexander the Great. So Ephesus had a lot of visitors, including Alexander the Great. He decided he liked Ephesus, so he kind of took it over. Again, pretty easy to take over because they had they didn't have much of an army. They didn't have much of a bridge. They were a trading post, basically. So he took it over also as well. But then it goes further. It was occupied by the Romans in 133 BC. Remember, they could come in and take it over too. So the Romans ended up taking it over in 133 BC. And then it just keeps on going. Ephesus was occupied by St. Paul. Well, not really. See, what happens is St. Paul decided to go there because it was a big city, 250,000. It was more open, and they were having a lot of problems, as you know, in Jerusalem. Christ was killed. There's a lot of agita going on there. So he picked up and he went to Ephesus, which is a big city. He figured, well, we can start all over again. Except he attacked Artemis. Remember, the temple of Artemis at Ephesus, that was a big deal. That was so big that they were selling statues. The merchants were making a fortune selling statues of Artemis, tiny little statues, but selling them all over the ancient world. And Paul said, Artemis isn't a god, it's all fake. Well, he said it way too much to the merchants who were starting to lose money, and they kicked him out. And when they kicked out Paul, he had to go flee to Corinth or go to Rome, go somewhere else, but not in Ephesus. But he still had a following there, so he started writing letters to them. And that's the reason you see the letters to the Ephesians, okay? It's because he wasn't living in Ephesus. But who wasn't kicked out? Apparently, St. John and Mary. They stayed for quite some time because they weren't as vocal as Paul. He would write his gospel, the Gospel of St. John, but he wasn't running around dissing Artemis, so he stayed there for a while. Then he went to Patmos for a couple of years and then came back, and he purportedly lived about 100. And then he passed away. They even have, and I'm not going to show it to you, they actually have a basilica, and they thought they had his ruins, but no one could find his ruins. But they did build a basilica for him. They built a church for Mary also as well. And both of those were built, and they're both ruins today. Well, it just goes on further. Things don't get easy for Ephesus. It was occupied by the Arabs in the 7th century. Again, coming along the land and saying it's ours now. I mean, it's similar to Russia and Ukraine. Hey, it's ours now, maybe. And so the thing is that happened. And then finally, now this thing shocked me, Ephesus became a UNESCO site in 2015. So it took that long before it became a UNESCO site. So why did people go? And why would you go? The Temple of Artemis at Ephesus was built there in 560 BC. It is one of the last standing structures of the ancient world, one of the 7 wonders. The other one, of course, is Giza, and the other one is, of course, the library at Alexandria, which is completely gone. And then Zeus at Delphi, and that's completely gone. And the Colossus at Rhodes, completely gone. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon, completely gone. So you can see there's a lot of places, and the Muslim at Hippocatus, whatever, that's completely gone. So this is one of 2. You can go see this one. You can see the pyramids at Giza, and then that's it. So if you see those 2, you've seen 2 of the only last standing wonders of the ancient world. Okay, so the temple was burned in 556 BC by Herostratus. So the temple was actually burned. Now, Herostratus wanted to become famous. This is, you can't make this up. So he decided, I'll burn the temple. And now I become famous. Of course, they killed him. But that was his claim to fame in 356 BC. But every time they burned it, they just rebuilt it anyway. So I guess he became famous, but it didn't mean much because they just rebuilt it again. And then the Ephesus Theater, like I said, holds 25,000 people. So they have a stadium, theater, whatever you want to call it, holds 25,000 people. In some cases, it's even used today. So I think that's pretty good. Now, this thing is pretty impressive. And it didn't show up on the books. It's the Tetragons Agora. Now, the agoras are really a meeting place. And the thing is, the meeting place was actually huge. And so the thing is, you can actually go to it. It's pretty huge. I can say that. And basically, it had a lot of shops. It's like a big open mall area, and it's something that you can see if you happen to go to Ephesus. It's pretty impressive, and it'll be probably the last thing that you'll end up seeing when you're over there. But they have a lot in this place. Remember, 250,000 people. They also have the Ephesus Gymnasium. It's also there in Ephesus, and you can see that as well. But the gymnasium, again, mainly ruins. And then we have also the Church of Mary, 431 AD. But the Church of Mary also, unfortunately, is ruins. So what else can you actually see in Ephesus that I think might be interesting for you? First of all, you can take a look at the city ruins. Oh, there's one more thing, and this goes to Turkey in general. Okay, I got to give a but what they do is they make really good food. So I think that you're going to have a good time. If you're a history buff or you're into archaeology, Ephesus is definitely the place to go because there's so much to see. You're going to be able to see so much during one day tour that you get there. You could spend a lot more time there, but again, that's entirely up to you. Now, from our standpoint, we're going to be moving on, and the travel channel, we're going to be discussing next time Istanbul, which is another big and fascinating city in Turkey. Turkey doesn't get enough love. The food's great, and their food certainly doesn't get enough love. But we're going to give Turkey some love today, and we'll see you next time on the Travel Channel, only on the Pod TV network. Till then, bye-bye.